The council chamber was silent as Ambassador Gina Lee stood before the assembled aliens. Her black suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and armor worn by the other species around the massive circular table. She had come here with one request, the same request Earth had been making for 50 years. "I ask again for justice," Gina said, her voice steady. 50 years ago, the Vrexian Dominion attacked our colony on Remembrance. They killed 300,000 humans, men, women, children. They burned our farms, they destroyed our homes. We had no weapons, we had no military. We were just families trying to build a new life. Chancellor Vixra, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, looked down at her with barely hidden annoyance. "Ambassador Lee, we have discussed this matter many times. The Galactic Council ruled it was a territorial misunderstanding. The Vrexians paid a fine. The matter is closed." "A fine," Gina repeated, her hands clenching at her sides. "You think money makes up for 300,000 dead?" "The decision stands," Vixra said. "This council will not reopen the case. If Earth continues to bring this up, we may reconsider your application for full council membership." Gina looked around the room at the various alien faces. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked bored. A few Vrexian representatives in the corner were actually smiling. She had known this would be the answer. Earth had known for years that the council would never help them. But she had to try one last time. She had to give them a chance. "Then we will seek justice ourselves," Gina said quietly. "Is that a threat?" Vixra asked. Standing up now. "No," Gina replied. "It is a statement of fact. Good day, Chancellor." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she could hear the aliens laughing and talking amongst themselves. They did not take her seriously. They never had. Humanity was young, weak, barely 50 years into space travel. What could they possibly do? Everything, Gina thought. We can do everything. Far from the council chambers, far from the politics and the laughter, Captain Minho Kang stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Reckoning. Through the massive view screen in front of him, he could see dozens of other ships floating in formation around Earth's orbital shipyards. These were not the small exploration vessels humanity had used before. These were warships. Minho was 58 years old now, but he remembered being 8 years old on Remembrance. He remembered his mother pushing him into a storage locker and telling him to stay quiet. He remembered the sounds of screaming. He remembered the heat from the fires. He remembered crawling out 3 days later to find nothing but ash and bodies. The Vrexians had not even bothered to check if everyone was dead. They had just left. "Captain," a voice said behind him. Minho turned to see Lieutenant Yoongi Shin, his best pilot. The young man was barely 25, eager and talented. "All squadrons are ready. We can launch on your order." "Not yet," Minho said. "Admiral Park wants to address the fleet first." As if on cue, the view screen changed. Admiral Hannah Park appeared, standing in the command center of the flagship Horizon. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but when she spoke, people listened. "Officers and crew of the United Earth Defense Fleet," Hannah began. "For 50 years we have prepared for this day. 50 years since the Vrexian Dominion murdered our people and faced no consequences. 50 years since the Galactic Council told us to forget, to move on, to accept that justice would never come." She paused, and Minho could see the fire in her eyes even through the screen. "But humans do not forget. We do not forgive those who slaughter our families and walk away laughing. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you wrong humanity and think we will stay quiet. We are not going to war. We are going to collect a debt. Every person on this fleet knows someone who died on Remembrance. We carry their memory with us. We fight for them." Across the fleet, Minho knew thousands of crew members were listening. He had given similar speeches to his own people. Everyone understood what this meant. This was not just military action. This was personal. The Vrexians think we are weak, Hana continued. The Council thinks we are too young, too inexperienced, too small to matter. They are about to learn otherwise. Today, the United Earth Defense Fleet leaves for Vrexian space. We will show them our strength. We will show them our mercy. And we will show them that humanity remembers. The screen went dark. Around Earth, engines began to glow. Ships that had been built in secret, using resources from asteroid fields far from prying eyes, started to move. For 50 years, humanity had focused every resource, every brilliant mind, every bit of determination on this single goal. In the lower decks of the Reckoning, Dr. Yoonji Choi watched her screens carefully. The Cascade Drive was humanity's greatest achievement, a jump system that could move ships instantly across short distances in combat. No other species had this technology. She had spent 20 years developing it, running simulations, testing prototypes. Now it would be used in real battle. "The drive is stable," she reported to the bridge. "All systems green." "Thank you, Doctor," Minho replied. He looked at his crew, all of them waiting for his command. "Take us out. Set course for Vrexian space." The fleet moved as one, slipping into hyperspace with a flash of light. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations detected the massive fleet movement. Alarms went off in council chambers, in military headquarters, on news stations. Humanity was moving, and they were moving with force. On Vrexia Prime, Overseer Thexnall received the first reports with amusement. Humans? Coming here? With what, their little exploration ships? He had been a junior officer during the Remembrance incident. He remembered how easy it had been, how the human defenses had fallen in hours. They had no military tradition, no warrior culture, no stomach for real fighting. "Let them come," he told his staff. "We will crush them as easily as we did before. Perhaps this time they will learn to respect their betters." He ordered a standard defense fleet to the outer rim. Nothing too serious, just enough ships to handle whatever pathetic force the humans had assembled. He did not even consider asking for reinforcements. In the council chambers, Chancellor Vixra was not as confident. Something about Ambassador Lee's calm delivery worried him. Humans were emotional creatures, prone to outbursts and drama, but she had been so controlled, so certain. He called an emergency session to discuss possible intervention. As the council debated, as the Vrexians prepared their defenses, as the galaxy watched with curiosity and concern, the human fleet traveled through hyperspace. Inside their ships, soldiers checked weapons, pilots ran final checks on fighters, engineers monitored systems, and in quiet moments, many of them looked at photos, at names, at memories of people who had died 50 years ago. Humanity was coming. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Vrexian territory. Immediately, sensors picked up the defense fleet waiting for them. 30 Vrexian warships, each one 3 times the size of a human vessel, hung in formation like predators waiting for prey. On the bridge of the Reckoning, Captain Minho Kong studied the tactical display. His crew was silent, watching the enemy ships on their screens. This was it, the first real test. 50 years of preparation came down to the next few hours. "They are hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put it through," Minho said. A Vrexian commander appeared on the screen. His face was covered in dark scales, and his yellow eyes looked at Minho with obvious contempt. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Vrexian space. Turn back now or be destroyed." Minho leaned forward in his chair. "I am Captain Minho Kang of the United Earth Defense Fleet. 50 years ago, your people murdered my family. Today we have come to collect payment for that crime. Stand down and we will show mercy. Resist and we will show you what humanity has learned about war." The Vrexian commander laughed. "You think your primitive ships can challenge us? We will add your wreckage to the debris field, just like we added your colony to ash." The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, the Vrexian ships began moving forward, weapons powering up. Around the reckoning, the human fleet spread out into attack formation. "All ships," Admiral Hannah Park's voice came through the fleet channel. "Engage at will. Show them what we have built." What happened next shocked the watching galaxy. As the Vrexian ships closed in, firing their massive plasma cannons, the human ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next moment gone. The Vrexian weapons hit empty space. Then the human ships reappeared behind the Vrexian formation. The Cascade Drive had worked perfectly, jumping the entire fleet short distances in an instant. Before the Vrexians could turn their ships around, human railguns opened fire. Solid metal slugs, accelerated to incredible speeds, punched through Vrexian shields like paper. "Targets acquired," Yoongi Shin called out from his fighter. He led a squadron of 50 small craft, each one moving faster than anything the Vrexians had ever seen. They were not just flying. They were dancing through space, weaving patterns that seemed random, but were perfectly calculated. Yoongi Choi's second weapon was revealed now. Small drones, thousands of them, poured out of the human ships. They swarmed toward the Vrexian vessels like angry insects. The Vrexians fired their point defense systems, but there were too many targets. The drones latched onto hull plating and started cutting through with laser torches. "They are trying to regroup," Minho's tactical officer reported. "Enemy ships forming defensive sphere." "All ships, execute Cascade Pattern Delta," Admiral Park ordered. The human fleet blinked again, this time appearing spread around the Vrexian formation at precise distances. They fired together, creating a crossfire that the Vrexians could not escape. Shields overloaded. Hull plating melted. Ships began to break apart. On his command ship, the Vrexian commander finally understood what was happening. These were not the weak humans from 50 years ago. These were trained warriors with advanced technology. He tried to call for reinforcements, but Yoongi's fighter squadron had already taken out his communication arrays. "Break formation," the Vrexian commander ordered. "Individual ships, attack at will." It was the wrong order. As soon as the Vrexian ships broke their defensive sphere, they became isolated targets. Human ships worked in perfect coordination, 3 or 4 ganging up on single enemy vessels. The Cascade Drive meant they could be anywhere at any moment. The Vrexians could not predict, could not plan, could not even aim properly. Yoongi brought his fighter in close to a Vrexian cruiser. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. He had trained his entire life for this. He targeted the ship's reactor housing and fired. His missile, small but precisely aimed, slipped through the damaged shields and detonated inside the ship. The cruiser exploded in a flash of white light. "Splash 1, Yoongi reported, already turning toward his next target. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human pilots, human gunners, human tacticians, working together like a single organism. They had studied Vrexian tactics for 50 years. They knew every weakness, every standard response, every predictable move. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it ended, all 30 Vrexian ships were destroyed or drifting as dead hulks. The human fleet had lost 0 ships. They had taken some damage, some crew injuries, but nothing serious. It was not even close. In the council chambers, the assembled aliens watched in stunned silence. The battle had been broadcast across the galaxy by news drones. Everyone had expected to see brave but futile human resistance. Instead, they watched the Vrexians get systematically destroyed by an enemy that moved like ghosts and fought like demons. "This cannot be," Chancellor Vixra whispered. "How did they develop such technology?" Ambassador Gina Lee stood in the back of the chamber watching the screens. She allowed herself a small smile. "You ignored us for 50 years, she said. "Did you think we spent that time doing nothing? We built, we learned, we prepared. Every human colony, Every research station, every ship crew knew what we were working toward. You called it a closed matter. We called it unfinished business. The Council demands that Earth stand down immediately, Vixera said, turning to face her. This aggression will not be tolerated. Aggression? Gina's voice was cold. We asked for justice through proper channels for 50 years. You denied us every time. What did you think would happen? Did you think we would just forget? Let me be very clear, Chancellor. The United Earth Defense Fleet is going to Vrexia Prime. We are going to hold the people responsible for the Remembrance Massacre accountable. You can watch or you can try to stop us. But know this. Any species that interferes will be considered hostile. Humanity is done asking permission. She walked out of the chamber again, leaving the aliens arguing amongst themselves. Some wanted to send fleets to stop the humans. Others urged caution. A few, those who had suffered under Vrexian aggression themselves, stayed silent but looked thoughtful. On the reckoning, Minho stood looking at the floating wreckage of the Vrexian fleet. He felt no joy in the victory. These ships had not been at Remembrance. These crews had not killed his family. They were just soldiers following orders, but they had chosen to fight rather than stand aside. Captain, his communications officer said, we are receiving messages from multiple sources. Some are threats, some are encouragement. And sir, 3 smaller species have sent us coordinates of Vrexian military outposts in their territory. They want us to know where to find targets. Minho was not surprised. The Vrexians had bullied many species over the years. Now that someone was finally standing up to them, others wanted to help. Acknowledge the messages, Minho said. But tell them we fight our own battle. This is between humanity and the Vrexians. Yes, sir. Admiral Park's face appeared on his screen. Well done, Captain. All ships performed beyond expectations. We proceed to Vrexia Prime. Estimated arrival, 4 days. Understood, Admiral. My ship is ready. As the human fleet regrouped and jumped to hyperspace again, heading deeper into Vrexian territory, the galaxy processed what they had witnessed. Humanity was not just capable of fighting, they were good at it, very good, and they were not going to stop until they got what they came for. On Vrexia Prime, Overseer Thexnal received the reports from the Outer Rim. At first, he refused to believe them. His entire defense fleet, gone, in less than an hour? Impossible. But the evidence was clear. Wreckage patterns, survivor testimonies, sensor logs. The humans had not just won, they had dominated. For the first time in his life, Thexnal felt something he had never experienced before: fear. He began calling up reserves, activating planetary defenses, requesting emergency military powers from the government. The humans were coming, and now he knew they were not the victims he remembered. They were something new, something dangerous, something that held grudges. The human fleet arrived at Vrexia Prime to find the planet bristling with defenses. Orbital platforms surrounded the world like a metal shell. Ground-to-space cannons dotted the surface. The remaining Vrexian navy, over 100 ships, waited in high orbit. This was their homeworld, and they would defend it with everything they had. Captain Minho Kang stood on the bridge of the Reckoning and looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there were the people who had given the order to destroy Remembrance. Somewhere down there were the leaders who had laughed at human suffering and faced no punishment. His hands tightened on the railing. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Broadcast to the planet and to the entire galaxy." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. You are broadcasting on all frequencies." Minho took a breath. Beside him, screens showed images from 50 years ago. Burning buildings, dead children, destroyed homes. He had carried these images in his memory every day since he was 8 years old. Now the galaxy would see them too. "People of Vrexia Prime, I am Captain Minho Kang of Earth," he began. 50 years ago, your government ordered an attack on our colony world of Remembrance. 300,000 humans were killed. We had no weapons. We had no military. We were farmers and families building a new life. Your ships came and burned us. Your soldiers shot fleeing civilians. Your leaders called it a minor territorial correction. He paused, letting the images play on screens across the planet and across the galaxy. The Galactic Council told us to forget. They told us to move on. They said justice was too complicated, too politically difficult. So we stopped asking them. We decided to seek justice ourselves. You have 24 hours to surrender your military leadership for trial. If you refuse, we will show you what a minor correction looks like from the receiving end. The transmission ended. Across Vrexia Prime, millions of citizens watched the broadcast. Many had never known about the Remembrance Massacre. The government had kept it quiet, just another military action in a long history of territorial expansion. Now they saw the footage. Now they heard the humans' cold, controlled anger. In the planetary government building, Overseer Thexanol met with the High Command. They were divided. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to fight. Thexanol himself was in the second group. He had spent his entire career in the military. The idea of surrendering to a species they had beaten so easily 50 years ago was unthinkable. "We will fight," he declared. "The defenses are strong. They may have won against our outer fleet, but here, at our homeworld, we have every advantage. They cannot break through." "Overseer," one of his subordinates said carefully, "perhaps we should consider their offer. They only want the leadership who gave the order at Remembrance. If we hand over a few officials, this can end peacefully." "No!" Thexanol slammed his hand on the table. "We do not bow to inferior species. We do not surrender. We fight, and we will crush them." The command voted. Fight won by a narrow margin. The official response was sent to the human fleet. Surrender was rejected. On the reckoning, Admiral Hannah Park received the message without surprise. She had expected this answer. The Vrexians were a warrior culture. They valued strength above all else. They would not understand that sometimes the stronger choice was to admit fault and face consequences. "Begin the siege," she ordered. What followed was not a battle in the traditional sense. It was a systematic dismantling of Vrexian military capability. The human fleet did not charge forward blindly. Instead, they used their cascade drive to appear at precise locations, strike specific targets, and vanish before the Vrexians could respond. Yoongi Shin led his squadron against the orbital platforms. His fighters moved like birds, swooping in from impossible angles. They targeted power generators, weapon systems, sensor arrays. Each strike was surgical, precise. Within hours, half the platforms were dark and drifting. From her lab aboard the Horizon, Dr. Yoongi Choi unleashed her second innovation. EMP torpedoes, but not the simple electromagnetic pulse weapons other species used. These were smart weapons. They could rewrite computer systems, turning Vrexian weapons against themselves. A massive ground-to-space cannon on the planet's surface suddenly changed targets. Instead of firing at human ships, it aimed at a nearby Vrexian destroyer. The destroyer's shields absorbed the first shot, but the second one punched through. Chaos spread through the Vrexian defensive network as weapon after weapon turned traitor. "What is happening?" Thexanol shouted in the command center. "Why are our guns firing on our own ships?" "The humans, sir," a technician replied, frantically trying to regain control. "They are reprogramming our systems remotely. I cannot stop it." Minho watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. Every strike was planned. Every target was chosen carefully. And most importantly, every attack avoided civilian areas. Human weapons hit military installations with perfect accuracy. Not a single civilian building was damaged. Not one residential area was struck. This was intentional. This was the message. 50 years ago, Vrexians had killed civilians without care. Now humans showed they could destroy military targets while completely protecting innocent lives. It was a demonstration of both power and restraint. The galaxy watched. News drones captured everything. Species across countless worlds saw human ships dancing through Vrexian defenses. They saw precise strikes. They saw military dominance. And they saw mercy. The humans could have bombarded the planet. They could have killed millions in revenge, but they did not. In the Galactic Council chambers, the debate raged. Chancellor Vixra wanted to send peacekeeping forces to stop the conflict, but when he called for a vote, species after species declined. Some openly stated that the Vrexians deserved this. Others simply said they would not interfere in a legitimate grievance. Ambassador Gina Lee addressed the council directly. For 50 years, you told us to accept injustice for the sake of stability. You said that reopening old wounds would destabilize the galaxy. Now you see the result of ignored crimes. Every species watching should take note. If you commit genocide and face no punishment, eventually the victims will seek their own justice. We are not monsters. We are not destroying civilian targets. We are systematically eliminating the military capability of a government that murdered our people. This is what justice looks like when the courts refuse to deliver it. She looked around at the assembled aliens. And for those of you who have suffered under strong neighbors, who have endured crimes with no recourse, remember this day. Remember that someone finally stood up. Remember that there is a species in this galaxy that does not forgive or forget when children are murdered. The siege continued for 3 days. On the second day, the Vrexian fleet attempted a coordinated assault on the human ships. It was a disaster. Human vessels used their cascade drives to split the fleet apart, isolating ships and destroying them individually. The coordination that the Vrexians had practiced for decades meant nothing against an enemy that could be everywhere at once. By the third day, Vrexia Prime's defenses were crippled. The orbital platforms were destroyed. The ground-to-space cannons were slag. The fleet was reduced to scattered survivors. And through it all, not a single civilian had died. The humans had proved their point perfectly. They were not the helpless victims of 50 years ago, and they were not butchers like the Vrexians had been. In the government bunker deep underground, Thexnal stared at the tactical displays showing the destruction of his forces. His perfect defenses had crumbled in 3 days. His mighty fleet was wreckage, and the humans were still there, waiting. A junior officer approached carefully. "Sir, the civilian government is requesting your presence. They want to discuss surrender terms." Thexnal closed his eyes. He had been wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. These humans were not inferior. They were not weak. They had spent 50 years becoming something terrifying, an enemy that fought with both skill and principles, an enemy that could kill but chose not to, an enemy that wanted justice, not revenge. "Tell them I will attend," he said quietly. That night, Minho stood alone in his quarters, looking at an old photograph, his mother and father smiling at the camera. They had been excited about the new colony, about giving their son a better life. They had died for that dream. "We got them," Minho whispered to the photograph. "We made them answer for what they did to you." He did not feel happy. He felt tired. But he also felt that a weight he had carried for 50 years was finally starting to lift. Justice was not about revenge. It was about making things right. And for the first time since he was 8 years old, something felt right. The surrender came on the morning of the 4th day. Overseer Thexnal and 15 members of the Vrexian High Command transmitted their unconditional surrender to the human fleet. They agreed to be taken into custody for trial. They agreed to the dismantling of their military. They had no choice. Human shuttles descended to the planet's surface and collected the prisoners. The galaxy watched as Vrexian leaders, some of the most powerful beings in their space, were escorted onto human vessels with their hands bound. Thexanol walked with his head high, trying to maintain dignity, but his eyes showed defeat. The trial was held aboard the Reckoning. Captain Minho Kang had insisted on this. The ship had been named for this purpose, to be the place where accounts were settled. Admiral Hannah Park invited representatives from a dozen species to observe. The council had not sanctioned the trial, but that did not matter. Humanity was doing this with or without permission. The main hangar bay had been converted into a courtroom. Chairs for observers lined the walls. At the front sat 3 human judges, all survivors of the Remembrance Massacre. In the center, behind a force field, sat the accused Vrexians, and before them all stood the evidence. Minho took the witness stand first. He was not just a captain now. He was a survivor, and he had a story to tell. "I was 8 years old," he began, his voice echoing in the silent hangar. "I lived with my parents on Remembrance Colony. We grew vegetables. My father was teaching me how to repair farming equipment. My mother sang while she cooked. We were happy." He paused, looking directly at Thexanol. The overseer met his gaze but said nothing. The Vrexian ships came without warning, no communication, no demand for surrender. They just started firing. Our colony had no shields, no weapons, no defenses. We were civilians. My mother pushed me into a storage container and told me to hide. I heard her scream. I heard my father shouting. I heard the building collapse. I stayed in that container for 3 days, too scared to come out. Around the hangar, the observers were silent. Screens showed footage from the massacre. Vrexian ships firing on fleeing families, buildings burning, children running. The images were brutal and clear. When I finally came out, everything was gone. My home was ash. My parents were dead. 300,000 people, and I could only find pieces of them. The Vrexian ships had left. They did not even check if their job was complete. We were nothing to them, an inconvenience, a minor correction. He stepped down. Other survivors testified. A woman who lost her 3 children. A man who watched his wife burned alive. A teenager who survived by hiding under bodies for 2 days. Each story was worse than the last. The observers shifted uncomfortably. Even some of the Vrexian prisoners looked disturbed. Finally, it was time for the defense. Thexanol stood. He was allowed to speak without restriction. "What we did was wrong," he said, and surprised everyone. "I do not deny this. The attack on Remembrance was ordered by our government as a territorial action. We believed the humans had settled in space that was rightfully ours. We responded with military force." "Against unarmed civilians," one of the judges said. "Yes," Thexanol admitted. "Against unarmed civilians. This is our way. In Vrexian culture, strength is everything. We saw the humans as weak, and in our minds, the weak have no rights. This is how we have always operated. This is how we have built our dominion." "And now?" Minho asked from his seat. Thexanol looked at him. "Now I understand we were wrong. Not just about humans, but about everything. You could have destroyed our planet. You had the power. You could have killed millions of our civilians in revenge, but you did not. You targeted only military installations. You avoided civilian casualties. You showed restraint we never showed you. You proved that mercy is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of strength." He sat down. The observers murmured. This was unprecedented. A Vrexian military commander admitting fault, admitting humans were superior in some way. The galaxy would be talking about this for generations. The trial lasted 2 days. Evidence was presented. Arguments were made. The judges deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. "Overseer Thexanol and the Vrexian High Command are found guilty of genocide," the lead judge announced. 300,000 counts of murder, crimes against sentient beings, violations of the Galactic Conventions on Warfare. "What is the sentence?" Chancellor Vixra asked from his observer seat. "Permanent exile. The convicted will be transported to a neutral prison world where they will spend the rest of their lives. The Vrexian military will be dismantled. All warships beyond basic system defense craft will be destroyed. Vrexia Prime will be placed under joint galactic supervision for 25 years to ensure compliance. These terms are non-negotiable. Thexanol accepted the sentence without protest. His fellow commanders were less graceful, but they had no choice. Human guards escorted them away to waiting prison ships. As the trial concluded, something unexpected happened. Ambassadors from 7 different species approached Gina Lee privately. They asked to speak in a secure location. When they gathered aboard the Horizon, they all had similar stories. "The Vrexians took 3 of our colony worlds 30 years ago," said a representative from the Daleth species, a small insectoid race. "The Council told us to negotiate. We lost the worlds." "The Corvan Empire bullied us for 2 decades," said another. "They forced us into unfair trade agreements. When we complained to the Council, nothing happened." One by one, they shared grievances. Crimes committed by stronger species against weaker ones. Injustices that the Council had ignored because it was politically convenient. And now they all had the same question. Would humanity help them too? Gina listened carefully. This was a complicated situation. Earth had just fought one war. Could they take on others? Should they? "I cannot promise military action," she said finally. "But I promise this. Humanity will stand with those who seek justice through proper channels. We will support reforming the Council. We will use our new position to give voice to species that have been ignored. What we did was settle our own debt. What happens next will be different. We will work for systemic change, not just individual revenge." The ambassadors seemed satisfied with this. It was more than they had before. Meanwhile, Admiral Hannah Park held a conference with her senior officers. Lieutenant Yoongi Shin was there, promoted to squadron commander for his performance in battle. So was Dr. Yoonji Choi, whose technology had made victory possible. "We need to discuss Earth's position going forward," Hannah said. "We are now a major military power. Other species will approach us for help. Some will fear us. Some will want to test us. We must decide what kind of power we want to be." "We should help others," Yoongi said immediately. "We know what it feels like to be ignored. We should not let that happen to other species." "But we cannot fight everyone's wars," Minho countered. "We need to rebuild. We need to ensure our own security first." Yoongi spoke up. "I propose we share some of our technology with allied species. Not weapons, but defensive systems. Help them protect themselves rather than fighting their battles for them." The debate continued. But ultimately they agreed on principles. Earth would work within the galactic system to reform it. They would support the oppressed but not become the galaxy's police force. They would share technology carefully. And most importantly, they would never forget what happened when justice was ignored. The Council was reformed within months. New rules were established. All grievances would be heard. Justice could not be indefinitely delayed. And the Council gained a new permanent member, Earth. When Ambassador Gina Lee took her seat at the Council table for the first time as a full member, Chancellor Vixera stood to make a speech. "Humanity has taught us a painful lesson," he said. "We ignored their suffering because it was convenient. We told them to forget because it was easier than delivering justice. We were wrong. This council was designed to maintain peace and order, but we forgot that true peace requires justice. We cannot have stability built on ignored crimes. Humanity has reminded us of this truth, and we are better for it." Gina accepted his words with a nod. It was not an apology, but it was acknowledgement. That was something. Back on Earth, people celebrated. Not because of the military victory, but because finally, after 50 years, the world could start to heal. Remembrance Colony was rebuilt. A memorial was erected with the names of all 300,000 dead. And Minho Kang, no longer a captain but a civilian again, stood before it and wept. Justice had been served. The debt was paid. Humanity could move forward. 6 months after the trial, the galaxy looked very different. The Vrexian Dominion had been reduced to a shadow of its former power. Their military was dismantled, their leadership imprisoned, and their territory under supervision. But this was not just about the Vrexians anymore. Humanity had opened a door that could not be closed. Admiral Hannah Park stood in her new office on Earth, no longer in uniform but wearing the simple suit of a civilian government official. She had retired from active military command to become Earth's defense minister. Her job now was not to wage war, but to prevent it. Through the window, she could see the orbital construction yards where new ships were being built, but these were not warships. They were trade vessels, exploration ships, and diplomatic carriers. "We showed the galaxy our teeth," she said to her assembled staff. "Now we show them our heart." The policy was called the Remembrance Doctrine, named after the colony that started everything. It had 3 parts. Earth would help oppressed species defend themselves, Earth would work within the galactic system to reform it, and Earth would never tolerate genocide or mass murder against any species, not just humans. Already, the doctrine was being tested. 3 smaller species had requested Earth's help in improving their defensive capabilities. Dr. Yoonji Choi led teams that were teaching them about shield technology, sensor systems, and communication networks. She refused to share weapons technology, but defense was different. Every species deserved the ability to protect themselves. "If we just give them weapons, we become arms dealers," Yoonji explained to a reporter. "But if we teach them how to build strong defenses, we give them the power to protect their own people. That is the difference between creating dependency and creating strength." Lieutenant Yoongi Shin, now Commander Shin, had a different role. He was training the next generation of pilots. His students came from Earth and from allied species who wanted to learn human tactics. In the training center orbiting Mars, young pilots from a dozen worlds learned the principles that had made human forces so effective. "Fighting is not about being the strongest," Yoongi told his class. "It is about being the smartest. You see this pattern?" He displayed a combat simulation on the screen. "This is how Vrexian ships moved. Predictable, standard. They relied on strength and tradition. We won because we thought differently. We innovated, we adapted. This is what I teach you, not how to copy human tactics, but how to think for yourselves." One of his best students was actually a young Vrexian named Keth. The boy was only 16, born after the Remembrance Massacre. He had grown up hearing about the war and wanted to understand the humans who had defeated his people so completely. "Why do you not hate us?" Keth asked Yoongi one day after training. Yoongi considered the question. "I do not hate Vrexians. I hate what your government did 50 years ago, but you were not even born then. You did not kill anyone. You did not give those orders. Why would I hate you for crimes you did not commit? But we are the same species. And humans fought humans in countless wars on Earth before we went to space," Yoongi replied. "Species identity does not determine character. Your choices do. You chose to come here and learn. You chose to be better than the leaders who came before you. That is what matters." Keth nodded slowly, understanding. This was another lesson. Humans separated the guilty from the innocent, even when it was difficult. Captain Minho Kang had returned to Remembrance, now rebuilt as a thriving colony. He had retired from the military entirely and taken a position as the colony's memorial director. His job was to ensure that the 300,000 dead were never forgotten. The memorial was a massive structure, a wall with every name carved into black stone. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it. Some came out of curiosity, others came to pay respects, and a few came to learn. One day, an old Vrexian approached Minho at the memorial. The alien was frail, walking with a support device. Minho recognized him from files. This was one of the officers who had participated in the original attack. He had not been part of the high command, so he had not been tried. But he had been there. "I came to see what we destroyed," the old Vrexian said. His voice was rough with age and regret. "I was young then. I followed orders. I thought we were doing the right thing, expanding our territory, showing strength." Minho said nothing. He just waited. "I have lived with what I did for 50 years, the Vrexian continued. "I see their faces in my dreams, the ones I killed. I came here to say I am sorry. I know it means nothing. I know it does not bring them back. But I needed to say it." Minho looked at the old alien for a long moment. "You are right," he said finally. "It does not bring them back. But thank you for saying it." That took courage. The Vrexian nodded and walked away, leaning on his support device. Minho watched him go and felt something shift inside. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but perhaps the beginning of moving past the anger that had driven him for so long. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Gina Lee was working on the biggest reform in Council history. The Justice Initiative would create an actual judicial system for the galaxy. Species could bring grievances, and there would be binding arbitration. No more dismissals, no more ignored crimes. "This will be expensive," Chancellor Vixra warned. "Creating courts, training judges, establishing enforcement mechanisms." "It will be more expensive if we do nothing," Gina replied. "How many species are one ignored crime away from doing what we did? How many future wars can we prevent by delivering justice now?" The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity's reputation as both fierce warriors and principled actors gave their proposals weight. Other species looked at them and thought, if humans say this is important, we should listen. Not everyone was happy with Earth's new position. Some species resented humanity's rapid rise to power. Others feared them, and a few tried to test whether humans would really enforce their new doctrine. The test came from the Corvan Empire, a large civilization that had bullied smaller neighbors for decades. They decided to invade a small species called the Rilith, figuring that humanity would not risk war over someone else's problem. They were wrong. Earth did not send warships. Instead, they sent defensive systems and training teams. They helped the Rilith build shields around their colony worlds. They provided sensor networks that detected the Corvan fleet long before it arrived, and they publicly announced that any attack on the Rilith would be considered an attack on Earth's allies. The Corvan fleet stopped at the border. They had seen what human weapons could do. They had watched the Vrexian dominion fall in days. They decided that a few small planets were not worth the risk. The Rilith remained independent. Humanity did not fire a single shot. "This is the future we want," Hannah Park explained at a press conference. "Not victory through war, but peace through strength. We do not want to be the galaxy's army. We want to be the galaxy's example. Show species they can defend themselves. Show bullies that their victims have friends. Change the calculation so that aggression becomes too costly." The strategy worked. Across the galaxy, smaller species began forming defensive alliances. They shared technology, trained together, and supported each other. The old system where strength determined everything began to crack. 25 years after the trial, Overseer Thexnol died in prison. Before his death, he recorded a message that was broadcast across the galaxy. "I spent my life believing that power was everything," he said from his cell. "I believed that the strong had the right to dominate the weak. I was wrong. The humans taught me that true power is not just the ability to destroy. True power is the ability to destroy and choosing not to. True strength is showing mercy even when you have been shown none. I die knowing that the universe is better because humanity forced us to change. I only wish I had learned this lesson before so many innocents died." On Earth, people watched the message with mixed feelings. Some were satisfied that he had admitted his crimes. Others thought he should have suffered more. But most just felt tired. The revenge was done. The justice was delivered. It was time to move forward. The galaxy entered a new era. It was called the Age of Accountability. Species could no longer commit crimes and hide behind political complexity. Justice was not perfect, but it was better than before. And at the center of it all was humanity, the species that had come to settle a score and ended up changing everything. 50 years after the Remembrance Massacre, 100 years after humans first went to space, the United Earth Starship Resolution left on humanity's first true deep space exploration mission. It was not a warship. It was a science vessel, designed to explore unknown regions and make contact with new species. Commander Yoongi Shin, now gray-haired and distinguished, stood on the bridge as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. Beside him was his second officer, a young human woman named Sora. She had been born after the war, in the new era of peace and cooperation. "Sir," Sora said, looking at the star charts, "we will be the first humans to enter this region. We have no idea what we will find out there." Yoongi smiled. "Maybe we will find friends. Maybe we will find enemies. Maybe we will find species that need help, or species that can teach us new things. Whatever we find, we will face it the way humanity always does." "How is that, sir?" "With courage, with intelligence, and with the memory of where we came from. We are the species that was nearly destroyed and chose to build rather than hide. We are the species that sought justice rather than revenge. We are the species that showed the galaxy that being strong means protecting the weak, not exploiting them. That is who we are." The Resolution jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity into the unknown. Behind them, the galaxy watched with respect, with caution, and with hope. Humans had come to settle a score and shown everyone what they were capable of. Now they were going to show the galaxy what else they could do. And the entire galaxy was still watching.